It's time.
Hi, everybody. It's so nice to see you all again. It's been a long time. Uh, I was just lamenting with Kenny here that I've been busy, but he gave me permission to have a life. Thank you.
Yes, yes, you should have a life.
um, it's me, Natalie from Creative Makers. I'm so happy you're here, and today I'm with Kene Rosa. Hi.
Hello, hello, hello. How
Yeah,
are you?
I'm good.
Okay, good. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it is my pleasure. Are you
Yeah,
kidding? I
yeah.
love being here. This place is like fantasy land for
Hi,
me.
please. Okay, so what are we gonna do here?
Well, we're going to talk about, first of all,
Hmm.
tell me about what creativity looked like to you as a kid.
What creativity?
Yeah, what did you do? What sort of got the ball rolling? Do you remember? Like, was there something in particular?
No, I've always been interested in art and making things. Okay. Uh, Maybe the question that I need to answer is, what is the first piece of art that I saw that really whatever? I
Okay.
remember I was 5 years old. I was 5 years old, and we went on a school trip to MoMA, to the Museum
Modern art?
of Modern Art in New York, a class trip. So we went through the galleries, whatever, and the one thing I remember is the huge Henri Matisse painting of the little boy at the Pleyel piano. It's called, I believe it's called the Piano Lesson. It's a huge canvas, mostly white, with part of a grand piano with the top open, and there's a little boy sort of peering.
Mm-hmm.
I always remember that. I always remember that. I always remember that. As an adult, I've
Did
gone back.
when you in remembering that, did you remember it because you loved it, or because it was you were like fantasizing that you were the boy, or I
No,
mean,
I just loved it.
you
Just
just loved
loved
it?
it. There was something about that painting that grabbed my attention and never has never left my brain.
So
It never
interesting.
left my brain. So, and I've gone back as an adult to see it, and it's just, I could still sometimes, like when we have a memory, it's larger or smaller.
Mm-hmm.
This one is always the same.
It still means the
It
same
still
thing to
means the
you.
same. I feel like I'm 5 years old looking at it.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Now, did you actually make art as a kid? Was that something that you were attracted to?
Not as a kid, no. I did make art when I had to when I was in college.
When you had to,
Yeah, for art classes and stuff like that.
so that you had a well-rounded education?
Yeah. I at one point, as
I
a
mean,
matter of fact, I was speaking to Linda Areola,
oh yeah,
who has a show now well, it just closed at
at
Avenue
Avenue
50,
50.
and she does hard edge painting.
Yes.
It's very hard edge painting, and that was a big thing in the 60s and 70s, whatever, all these people. And in the 70s, I was making hard edge paintings. Now, I have one, maybe two paintings, actual paintings left, and I have photographs of a lot of the other ones. Uh, Most of the paintings that I did, I lent to a girlfriend of mine to decorate her apartment, and she disappeared off the
And
face of the
then
earth.
you never saw her
So
again.
I never saw her again, and I never saw the paintings again. Yeah, I have. I know definitely I have one painting, and I also have a little of file card box that I decorated.
Now, just for my audience's sake and
Mm.
mine too, what can you define hard edge painting?
Well, hard edge painting, the way that Linda does it and that I did it, basically is taking colors and lining them up, making shapes,
Hmm.
and then filling the shapes with color.
With no gradations, just
Yes,
one
just
color right next to the
next to
other.
the other, next to the other. And that, there's a book, there was a book written about how the brain perceives that. It's called After Image.
Mm.
It's when, let's say you put green and orange side by side.
Hmm.
If you look at that intently, you'll see that the colors start to vibrate.
Vibrate, yeah.
That's because your brain is doing something. But then, if you were to look away from that orange and green, you see the complementary colors on the wall. Try it.
Okay.
And it's called the after image.
See the complementary colors
Yes,
on the wall,
yes,
like on a white wall.
yes, on the white wall. Yeah, yeah. Dover published that book many years ago, and I forget what it's called. But that's the theory, the whole thing. And yeah, so hard edge painting are paintings that the colors, like Mondrian.
Yeah.
Mondrian is one of the early exponents of hard edge
Hard to paint.
painting.
Okay.
Uh, so
I would say maybe even some of the Picasso's work might have been
mm,
considered hard edged, or not.
not really, because just about. I don't think there's a completely abstract Picasso painting, because I think all of his paintings are figurative in one way or another. He's taking a face
Oh,
and breaking it up.
and so and so hard edge painting also has to be abstract.
Has to be
Ah,
abstract,
okay.
or should be abstract. I don't know if it has to be, but usually they're just shapes and that work together,
Hmm.
that make a design, or just are.
So, okay, so you're a kid, you were
Mm.
attracted to this painting and you sort of move along. Did you notice or do you remember noticing like being influenced by other work? I mean, did it help propel you? I mean, I
Well,
mean, how did it affect you as you moved forward?
I don't know. I think people are born with something inside of them that makes them do what they do. And I don't, I know that the painting struck me, and I remembered it. But also, my parents liked antiques and old things and whatever this and that. And so I grew up around a lot of different things, old things, and there's a lot of stimulus in our
Did
home.
your parents have the eye like you have, like for finding stuff?
Yes and no. My parents were not educated people. My father, I think, went to fourth grade, and my mother finally got her GED about a month before she passed away. So,
Oh
yeah,
my
yeah.
gosh.
But they had a sense of what is beautiful and good.
Hmm.
And my father, when I was born in the 50s, he was part-time. Well, they lived in a building where he was a superintendent. And as a superintendent, he would clean out apartments and everything else, and yada, yada, yada. And so he would always bring home things
That were left behind.
that were left behind that he thought were beautiful and my mother thought was beautiful. So they they had yeah, I could say that they had an eye for they liked beautiful things.
Well, I think that would have contributed to your eye for beautiful things as
I
well,
guess.
right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah,
if you're in the midst of it,
uh,
it would be hard to ignore,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
even if it's not, purposeful.
yeah. We didn't have lessons about this and that. My mother had at least what they used to call china cabinets. She had at least four of them filled front to back, up and down with crystal and china and all knickknacks and all sorts of things. And not really kitschy things. These were really nice. This was really nice stuff. As a matter of fact, I still have it's in this room, but it's in the back. I have one piece that was from my childhood that is a bowl that was made in Austria in 1905. It's a
Wow.
Viennese secessionist bowl. This bowl was one of my mother's favorite things, and that was always in the middle of the table. I don't know. I know that she didn't know what it was, but she knew
But
it
she
was
loved it,
pretty, and
and that was it.
that was it. Yeah.
So then, okay, so when you went to college, what was your major?
I majored in commercial art,
Oh,
and
okay.
education was my secondary. So I graduated as a teacher. I was certified, and I'm still certifiable. I was certified to teach kindergarten through 12th grade.
Did you do it?
No, I student
No.
student teaching at what was it? Was it I think it was Roosevelt High School. Really taught me the lesson. Well, two things were happening. Well, two things happened. That was in the 70s. And in the 70s, the Board of Education in New York was in an upheaval. Uh, Teachers who had jobs, I guess tenured teachers or whatever, were afraid of us, of the young kids coming up, because they felt that we were going to take their jobs. And the Board of Education kind of fed that.
Mm.
So there was this sort of animosity from our sponsoring teachers because they didn't want us to take their jobs. That and there was a lot of paperwork. There was a lot of paperwork that went with being a teacher. The thing that really sort of turned me off is that I was teaching my class, and this is a high school class, 12th grade, whatever, and part of the thing was measure an inch from the paper. I had kids there who didn't know what a ruler was. I had kids who, where's the inch, Mr. Rosa? How do I find the inch? And I'm like looking at this and I'm saying, these are people who are theoretically going to go out in the world in a few weeks, or if they don't go to college and they don't know how to read a ruler. So that kind of uh, taught me or told me this is not for you.
Yeah, that's an interesting place to be because I mean, you were like you read the situation as okay, move on.
Mm,
I think there'd be lots of other people too that would be like, I'm gonna teach everybody what a ruler is,
yeah,
But I
no,
mean, that's a big job right there.
yeah, no. I'm not a normal Ray type. I'm not gonna, as a matter of fact, I could be a bit vituperous at times. It just really, I mean, a kid in 12th grade should know how to read a ruler.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, they
uh,
should.
you know, uh,
All right, so now you're a teacher, and now you're not a teacher.
right.
Then what happened?
Then what happened? I sort of, I segued into working well, I did a lot of retail work. I worked high-end fashion retail. I mean, I never worked at a J.C. Penney, at a Ross, or whatever, whatever. I always worked with the uber super rich.
Hmm.
I mean, people who had more money that they can dream of and would spend more than what I would make in a year in an
Oh,
hour.
wow.
So it was, I met a lot of people. I mean, you can name people. And I met this one, I met that one. I met them as people coming in to shop.
Hmm.
So I was in the middle of Fifth Avenue, Park Avenue, that whole Madison Avenue, that whole whatever. And that was the tail end of the 70s. I mean, one of the stores I worked at, Halston had his townhouse up the street, and Elizabeth Taylor and all these people used to come and whatever to hang out and all. It was just crazy. So I did retail for many years. And then in between that, at one time, I think I had maybe like four jobs. I would work here, work there, whatever this and that. I had like four jobs. But then one of the early ones was I worked for a small, very bottom feeding auction gallery. And basically, what that man did is that he would go to an estate, and after everyone has gone through it, Christie's, Sotheby's, and whatever, whatever, he would buy the estate. He
He would
would
buy
the
whatever was left.
contents and the contents. So we would go. We would have maybe we would have 3 days, 3 days tops to go through the house, apartment, or whatever, and just take everything. And when I say everything, we would take the hinges off the doors, the doorknobs, whatever, because some of that stuff
It's valuable.
was Tiffany bronze and whatever, whatever. We would take everything. As a matter of fact, we did two major ones. We did one of the Vanderbilt Whitney houses out, a summer house out on Long Island, and we did the apartment of the woman from big chain department store, Stern, I think it was. That was a New York store.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big store, whatever. We did her apartment. As a matter of fact, I have a few pieces of furniture from her. So
So that was your entry into
it,
understanding auctions and uh, understanding valuable pieces.
you learned.
Right.
I learned a lot there, especially there because the people who would come to these sales, because we would take the merchant the stuff out of the house. He had a space downtown on 13th Street. As a matter of fact, it was. a block away from where Roy Lichtenstein had
Mm-hmm.
his studio. Um, he would have a sale like every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks. We'd have a major sale, and during that time, all of these dealers would come in, these antique dealers and people like that. And I came in at the tail end of that generation of old dealers, and I listened.
I was just going to
I,
say, so were you asking questions,
I
what is this? And
I was asking questions, I was listening, and I still tell people today, if somebody is trying to tell you something that you already know, don't say I know that, because what that person is telling you is the way they experienced it, and there more than likely will be something in what they tell you that you didn't realize.
that is an
So
interesting point.
you learn by listening. I never know nothing. I never know anything. You know, people have come up to me, and we're looking at a print on the whatever on the wall, and they're like telling me all this about prints, and I'm like this. I'm just whatever. Uh, I can read a print backwards and forwards. That's what I was trained to do,
Right.
and I was sent to Europe to do that. So so like, but I never tell people. I never say, "Oh, I know that," because then I stop that person from imparting their experience to me.
That is such a beautiful thought
Yeah.
right there. I mean, allowing the person across from you to express what
Hmm.
they need to express fully.
Yeah. Everybody knows something. Everybody experiences the same thing differently.
Right.
So one dealer will tell me this. One dealer, I learned how to stick my hand in a piece of furniture to find out if it's real or not. People don't know that, and it's funny. One time I was someplace, and there was this old furniture, like whatever this and that, and there was another dealer there who really didn't know me. So we went over whatever, and immediately I took the cushions off and was sticking my hand, and he said, "Oh, you know how to read furniture?" I said, "Yeah, this is what I was taught. If there's a certain type of nail, a certain type of screw, it shouldn't be this, it shouldn't be that, whatever." You learn that because you've learned it from other people.
So I want to go back to working in retail for
Hmm.
just a second. You have a particular sense of fashion. Did you gather that at that time, or did this just sort of evolve? You already
No,
had it.
no. My mother was a fashionista. My mother was a very very happy woman. She was like the life of the party. She was a very small, kind of stout woman, but she had purses to match her gloves, to match her dress, to match her hat. My mother loved parties. A plant in the apartment would drop a leaf, my mother would give a party because she would whatever, and she would wear makeup. She wore jewelry and whatever this that. She was very very much like that, and so that I got from her.
Ah,
And my father also, my father's not he's not a zlob, he's not a slob. Uh, he was a plumber, and when he the first thing before he did anything else, he came home from work in his overalls. He would shuck them at the door basically and go take a shower
yeah.
and then spray himself like with cologne. My father was kind of a dandy
Oh, was
also.
he?
Yeah, yeah. So really good looking man, very good looking man. And he knew it. And he knew it. And he will, oh yeah, he's whatever. He was a handsome man. But the sense of fashion and that when my mother passed away, well, this is a really weird story. When my mother passed away, she left a whole closet full of dresses, of probably over 100 dresses. But the thing with that, and I don't know if this is kind of with this thing, we were poor, and my mother liked clothes. So we used to go shopping at a street called Myrtle Avenue, which was in Brooklyn. We used to walk to it, was where all the shops were. And she saw this dress. She fell in love with this dress. It was an aqua blue dress with bell sleeves and silver sequins up to here,
Oh, it sounds
so
cool.
low cut. She loved that dress, and I believe then, this is 1968. I believe then the dress was $50. $50 in 1968 was a lot of money.
Money, yeah.
But she wanted that dress by hook or by crook. So she goes in the store. The store's name was Bobby Ann. I remember that. Uh, and she negotiates with the woman to let her pay for the dress on time. So every week, like clockwork, like church, we will go to Bobby Ann, my mother to bring her $5 to pay for the dress. Okay, so in like August or September of '68, we go. She gives her last $5, and she has her dress. She's like thrilled. So the dress goes into the closet, and that was a Saturday, and that Monday she had an appointment at the hospital to check her heart and everything else because she had heart problems. So I took her to the hospital that Monday. They decided to admit her Monday. So she was there Monday, Tuesday. And when I went to visit her on Wednesday, she had already died.
So she never got to wear the dress?
Wait. She died that Wednesday. That was September 4th. So my father needed someone to pick out her clothes. And so I have an elder sister, my mother's first child, and she also lived in Brooklyn, but she didn't live with us and had really not, she was married, whatever this and that. So my father calls my sister and says, can you come and go through your mother's clothes and pick out what she's going to wear in her coffin? There's like 100 dresses in there. 100 dresses in there. My sister had never heard of the dress. She had never seen the dress. She didn't live at the house. She goes to our project department, opens the closet, whatever. She goes through the dresses. She picks the aqua one with the silver sleeves. The last dress my mother bought was the dress that she's wearing in her coffin.
Oh my God.
It's the truth.
That that's crazy. It's almost like your mom led her to that dress.
Yeah.
That's the one I want to wear.
My sister had never seen it, never heard of it. My mother never spoke to her about it. She didn't know anything about the dress.
Oh my God.
But out of all the dresses, she picked that. So, and that's where I get the fashion stuff. She loved to get dressed up. And my father, they were 10 years apart. My mother was 10 years older than my father. But they were very compatible in a way that they both liked parties. They both liked entertaining. Yeah, it was fun.
Your mom must have been relatively young when she passed.
She was a month shy of her 52nd birthday.
Oh, yeah, way too young.
Yeah, yeah,
Way
yeah,
too young.
yeah. But there were other circumstances with her life that contributed to that. So yeah, but I think a major part of my appreciation of art and things like that came from home
Absolutely, I
because
would say so.
because my parents uh, never had that Jetson furniture with the curves and whatever. They always had old-fashioned furniture. It was always these big, overstuffed chairs and stuff like that. And when everybody was going sleek with Formica and these stick-like, they wouldn't have it at home. They would have it at home. Nope.
So, okay, so you started to learn about auctions
Hmm.
and the appreciation of
Hmm.
things.
Okay.
Where did it go?
Well, from there, well, I again, at one point I had like 4 jobs. So I would work retail sometimes. I would work at this auction place sometimes, and then somehow I got involved with a book dealer on 57th Street. Very well-known book dealer, and I became one of his assistant, really, his gallery assistant, and that's where I met Vincent Price. And that was the kind of clientele he had. Vincent Price, he had Mr. Hammer, Armand Hammer,
Hmm.
would come, and all of these other very wealthy men would come to buy art from this man and books and stuff. And so he was um, he was a fellow of the Morgan Library. So he would send me to the Morgan Library to go into their vault to find something for him. So, it's like you go in there, I mean, and you need like credentials up the wazoo. But since I worked for him and he was a fellow and he had his whatevers there, they would just let me in and I would, get what he wanted and go back. So I got involved with him and then I learned about books and print. And then once I left his gallery, I went to work for another print dealer, basically across the street. And I was working for a famous book dealer, and then I went over across the street and worked for an infamous print dealer. So so I learned a lot. That man, I could never thank him enough for the torture he put me through because it taught me how to look at art. It taught me how to look at things. I mean, without his tutelage, I don't think I would be as proficient as I am today.
So before we got on camera,
Hmm.
I'm telling everybody, before we got on camera, hello everybody. Um, Kenny and I were talking about he was giving me examples of stuff that he found in thrift stores for literally 99 cents and that have incredible value. Can I go get the red egg?
You can go get the red
I,
egg.
I'm going to be right back.
She's gonna be right back. She's gonna go lay an egg. Go lay an egg. Go
Okay.
lay an egg.
All right. I'm going to show you this and then we're going to have Kenny tell the story of it. So here's the red egg. It's aluminum. It's got a lid.
Mhm.
It's got some secret papers of Kenny's in it. But okay, please tell the story of
Okay,
the red egg.
the story with this thing is that this is the third one that I've owned, and this particular one is a gift from a good friend of mine, so it's going to stay with me until I drop dead. But previous to getting this one, I found two two of them at two different out of the closets,
Thrift stores.
the thrift stores. They both were at the different stores. They both were 99 cents. So I like red. I like the shape. I thought it was cute, whatever. And there isn't any marks. There aren't any marks in it, but it was interesting. So I bought the first one. Um, I didn't know what it was, and then I was consigning things to an auction house, and the person came and looked at it, whatever, and they took it. The first one sold for $5,000, and then the second one I sold for $3,000. Now, what this turns out to be, it's an aluminum container that is part of the invitation that was sent out by the Broad Museum for its inaugural. The egg was designed by Jeff Koons, and inside of the egg, when you took the top off, it had a banner in it that was yellow and white, like egg yolk, that had all of the information about the museum opening and everything else. And this, I believe, apparently came in a box that was mailed to people. So this was a throwaway giveaway. It was produced by LACMA, and
LACMA is the Los Angeles Museum of County. No,
yeah, Los Angeles County Museum of Art.
thank you.
And I believe it was done in an edition of either 2000 or 3000. They sent them all over, and people got this in the mail, the box in the mail. They take the egg out, and that was the invite inside. So along the way, three recipients of an invite got rid of everything else, and the egg wound up in a thrift store. So if you see an egg like that, there are no markings in it, nothing. Pick it up for 99 cents. You might be able to resell it.
It's kind of crazy, right? I mean, you could walk right by this, but Kenny, something sparked Kenny
Mm.
as he's walking by the color or whatever, and it happened to have worth.
Well, it's design. It's design. I know that my head works on design, and my late friend Bill Stern, who was the founder of uh, the Museum of California Design, he and I, when we first met, one of the first conversations that we had was about things and how people don't realize that things, everything in our life, first starts out as an idea, then starts out as a drawing, and then it becomes an object. You have to think about that. Even the tiny nail that goes into a picture frame, somebody had to engineer that size tiny nail and drew it out, and then it was forged. So everything's about design.
Mm.
Everything's about design. If you and that you can maybe say is the basis of cubism because they broke the plane down to like the basic shapes.
Hmm.
Everything is design. Nothing, well, not nothing. The only things that aren't are things that appear in nature.
Right.
Flowers and bugs and stuff like that. All of that, but anything that's man-made is design. Somebody thought about it, somebody drew it, and then somebody made it. So,
So, you're telling us this because this is something that we should keep in mind
yeah.
whenever we find anything.
Yeah, and good design always speaks. Good design, crap is crap, and you'll always know that crap is crap. But good design, there's always something about a piece of good design, and it doesn't have to be an object. It could be what you call it, a switch plate on a wall. And across the room, I have what's called industrial design. Those are the design of a switch connector, the design of a plug. All of that is design.
Yeah. Is that why you have that in that case there?
Well, no, that happens to be an art piece by an artist
I'm picking it up.
whose last name was Wang. And what it is, Tobias Wang. And what it is, the top comes off. What it is, I don't know if you can't see it from back there, but this turns the lamp on behind you.
Ah,
See, he designed, it's a wireless switch for a lamp behind us.
I just like the way you have it encased.
No, that's how it comes.
It comes like this? It
That's how
comes
he,
as something special like this?
that is a Tobias Wang piece of art. So that comes, it's that, and then it's the plug that goes in the wall that has the wireless connection. It has a battery in it that keeps it going.
You know what? You should tell the story about the dumpster find you found. The one that you just told me about, the picture in Goodwill.
At the Goodwill,
Here's
yeah.
another story he was just telling me.
Yeah, people buy things for their needs, whatever, and don't care about whatever or don't know what have you. I was at a Goodwill, and I'm looking around, whatever, trying to find the next treasure, and I look in the garbage can, and which I look in the garbage cans at every thrift store I go. Staff doesn't like it, but I do it. And I see this piece of paper that's kind of crumpled. So it had some black markings on it, and so I pulled it out. And when I flattened it out, it turns out to be a print. It's a lino cut, I believe, and it's black shapes, whatever, and it's signed and numbered. And the signature is Samela Lewis. So it was in the garbage. I picked it out of the garbage. I rolled it up and took it home. I had framed it and whatever this. And then a few years later, I consigned it to an auction place and it sold for maybe $3,000 or $4,000, something like that. Um, but you know, if you don't know what you're looking at, you don't know what you're looking at, and that's fine.
Right.
But for me, I didn't know that that was something that was worth a lot of money. I just know that it was something that somebody made, and it just called me. Shouldn't that light be on?
Yeah,
Um,
we don't need it. We
okay,
got lots of light.
so So yeah, so those things happen. I mean, you go to places and you find things that it's like being some people call me walking antiques roadshow.
Well, you because of what you wear and everything that you have on you, or just because you of
No,
your knowledge.
no, because because I have the knowledge or some of it, or I can just recently, a day or two ago, I get an email from a man who, strangely enough, does house cleanouts, and he sends me a photograph of piece of Viennese pitcher or something or other, and it's
Like
it's
ceramic
a
or
ceramic piece,
hmm
but it's just part of it, and it's just a design. So he's asking me if I know what this is and everything else. So I said, I said that's probably German. It's airbrush from the 1920s, and the piece should have an impressed number on the bottom because that's a shape number. So 2 days go by, and then he sends me a response, and he says, "Well, I found out that the piece that I sent you the picture of was designed by a guy named Gustav Brill in 1920 and is from Austria."
you hit the nail on the head. I mean,
Yeah,
other than having the guy's name, I mean, you
exactly.
knew everything about it.
Exactly. So, and that comes again from what I was saying earlier, from listening to people. There was one woman, and I need to say her name because she's dead many years now, I am sure. Her name was Ruth Stern. And this woman, she could smell a Picasso underneath a volcano. She knew what she didn't know, I don't know. I mean, she knew everything. And she would always engage me in conversations and show me how to tell that this is real, how to tell that this is not, how to tell that something has been repaired, um, how to date furniture by its style or by its look, whatever. She taught me a lot of the key things to be able to walk into a room and say, "Oh, that's a reproduction Hepplewhite chair." And but that's only because I listened to her and I learned from her, and that's why I always encourage people to listen to someone who's telling you something. You might not like the person, you might think that they're bullshitting you, whatever, whatever, but at the end of the day, you might come back or you might come out with a morsel of knowledge that you'll use the rest of your life.
I think I love I love the fact that you play not you're not playing dumb, but just that I'm going to go back to the fact that you let people just tell you
Mm-hmm.
share what they want to share with you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot of value in being quiet
Mm-hmm.
and letting people educate you.
Well, yeah, I look at it this way. If somebody is taking the time and making the effort to disseminate their knowledge, then it's incumbent on me to sit there and listen.
It's also a lesson, though, in moving your ego out of the way.
Well, yeah, it's like you don't know kids these days, you can't tell them anything because they
Know
know everything.
everything.
And you try and tell them something very simple. Oh, no, no, I know that. Oh, no, no, I can computer that. Oh, no, I can Google that. Fine.
Well, you know what, though? Society doesn't give anybody a place to not know anything
Hmm.
anymore. With the advent of the internet,
Hmm.
it's like not knowing something or not having seen
Hmm.
something implies that somehow you're dumb,
Hmm. Well,
you know?
but what are you learning on the internet? What are you learning on your phone if it's not, garbage in, garbage out? So that's a whole other thing. So, and I know I get it. I get it a lot of times when I'm someplace and somebody asks me about something, and they're like curling their face because I'm telling them what it is, and it happens. I mean, people believe or don't believe, and I get that across the board. I give people advice that they ask me for, and sometimes that they don't ask me for. They don't take the advice, but then when an authority tells them the same thing I told them, it becomes real.
But you are an authority.
No, I'm not. I don't like that word. I don't like being considered an authority. I don't like being considered an expert.
Why?
Why? Because for me, an expert and authority is someone who has tunnel vision,
Oh, okay.
and they are an expert in whatever. And in my experience, experts tend to not look out of the box.
It doesn't leave them any room to be curious. Is that?
It doesn't give them any space to understand that the people who have created what they're expert in, at the end of the day, are people, and that people have needs, people have wants, people have certain things that they have to do in order to survive. The example is, you can see a Picasso painting, and then you can see something that's crumpled or chipped or whatever that looks like a Picasso piece, but not whatever. And you say, well, that too is a Picasso. So I say, well, no, Picasso never did that. This one never did that. How do you know? How do you know? And what you call good example is Gauguin. Gauguin was a monster, but when he went to Polynesia, he was a banker by trade. He What did he do? He wasn't paint. He went there to paint, but in order to buy his coconuts, he was carving door frames.
Hmm.
So there are these fabulous door frames that he made in order to eat. So if you were to find something like that and say to an expert, this might be a Gauguin carving. Gauguin didn't do carving. He did. He did ceramics. All of these artists, most artists do a lot of things uh, to make a buck. At the end of the day, that's what it's about. I mean, you have a belly, you have to fill it, you have to feed it, you have a family, you have to feed them. So you do things that are not considered your style, your whatever. So I keep open. I don't peg myself as being an expert on any. I know a lot about nothing. So I know a little bit of nothing and a lot of everything, or whatever how it goes. I just You have to be open and receptive and understand that at the end of the day, anything that we look at, anything, whatever, was manufactured by a human being who, at the end of the day, has emotions, has feelings, has needs and wants. It's the same misconception that people have about politicians, clergy, anybody, whatever. At the end of the day, when you take your wig off, when you take your girdle off, when you take off your shoes, and you're sitting on the pot, you're the same as everybody. So you can be tempted, you can be had, you can do things that people don't think is what you would have done, but as a human being, you have that ability to do that, and you do that, and it boggles my mind all the time when people say, "Well, no, that's not from this one, that's not from that one." How do you know? Maybe he had a bill to pay, and he made a kazoo
Yeah.
and sold it, to make the money.
I have to tell you that we were sitting here talking again before everybody came on, and he was telling me about Picasso's ceramic work. I didn't know Picasso worked in ceramics, so this
Yeah.
was news to me.
He worked in wood, he worked in ceramics, he worked in metal, he worked in paper. There was just a really great show at the Hammer earlier this year or last year of the maquettes of ironwork that he befriend. If he didn't know how to work the material, he would befriend someone who did. So with this, with these little pieces of ironwork, sculptures that he made. He would design them, and then he had a guy, I believe it was in France, who would forge them.
Yeah.
So in this exhibition, they had the actual object and Picasso's drawing for it.
See, I mean, that's what this group is all about. It's
Mm-hmm.
about artists that can't stick to one medium.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're curious,
Yeah.
because we want to know, because we're trying stuff out, because we see something that sells for somebody and we think, well, maybe I can do
Well,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, it's all about
Well,
that.
that's the way it should be. And again, using Picasso as an example, um, any medium that he encountered, he tried to master everything. And that's why I mean, people don't even. It's not even out there yet, but there is a whole body of work that he did made from found objects. He had a friend, a woman friend who was a bibliophile, French woman. She died maybe like 20 years ago or something. And when she died in Paris, they were going through her apartment to sell her stuff, and they realized that she had this whole collection of, and she was a friend of Picasso, and he would visit her. Um, she had this whole collection of little pieces of art that he would make from things he found on the street on the way to her house. He would find a cigarette butt, he would find a cigarette packet, he would find a piece of bread, a piece of a baguette. He'd pick it up, take it home, make something out of it, and bring it back to her. So there's this whole collection of stuff that nobody knows about. So when they went, they're looking, and it's still Picasso's work,
Right. It's
but
just not conventional.
it hasn't been studied yet.
It's funny how when we see one style of work from an artist, we just tend to think that that's all they did.
Hmm.
Picasso was only a painter,
Yeah,
but to some people or
but
whatever.
but within his canon, you have his blue period, his this period, his that period, and most artists have. You can say they have those periods, they have those questions. They start. An artist starts with one thing, and then as you're working at it, you get another idea, whatever. You might finish that, but then the next thing you go on to is going to be different because you're trying to answer the question. And that's what I say about artists. I told you that earlier.
Yeah.
That I feel that every artist has a question or questions in their mind that they want to answer through their work. Um, and you don't necessarily have to reach the answer, but you're working through it. And as you're making your work, you're working through it. And I gave you the example of the Barbizon artist Harpigny, who
Worked only with trees.
worked only with trees and forests.
Yeah.
That was his thing. Probably was just light, how light reflects on leaves and whatever. That's all he did. I gave you the example of Degas, who any and every piece that you look at that Degas did is about movement.
Right.
So his question is about movement and how the body works, you know, in the world.
I think this is such a good thing for others to think about. I never thought about this in my own work, except that now I see like even what my own work is about. But to think about your work, and you can only see it after you've done a few things, I think, because you can't do it after just one piece. But after you have like an accumulation, you start to get the sense of what your question is and what you're trying to answer in your work. I think it's such a great thing to keep in mind.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
yeah. And you don't really have to have an actual, it's subconscious. It just comes out
Right.
in what you're doing. I mean, your brain is working and your hands are working.
Right. It's not something you have to figure out.
Exactly.
It's there.
You don't sit there and map it out and say, well, I'm going to do the Mona Lisa today. It's like
Right.
that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
But it's about taking everything in your life, the stimulus, whatever. It's always art. For me, art is always not a regurgitation, but it's an accumulation of things in an artist's life that they put. Not every. If you have five artists and you have one apple on the table,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
it's gonna be five different apples.
Of course.
That's
course.
guaranteed.
Yeah.
So. And that's because you bring. Okay, another thing I say is in that vein, people say, "Well, I don't understand this painting. I don't understand this art. I don't understand what the artist is trying to say." And I always tell people, I say, first of all, I never read the cards on the wall because that for me is somebody else's interpretation of what I'm supposed to be looking at.
Now, do you think it's somebody else's interpretation or the artist's interpretation?
It's always somebody else's interpretation unless the artist wrote what's on the wall.
Okay.
Okay?
Hmm.
It's always conjecture.
See, I never know who wrote it. That's the thing.
Usually it's a curator, usually it's an expert who writes it, whatever.
Mm.
Unless the artist himself or herself writes the blurb, it's somebody else's idea. But we all come to any and every piece of art with our own lexicon.
Right.
And what we see in a painting is what we're bringing to it. The painting is giving us something. It's giving us a visual, it's giving us an emotional, it's giving us something. But what we're seeing from it is from our perspective, from where we've been, or maybe where we're going, or maybe where we want to go, or maybe where we wish we hadn't gone. But we're bringing the language to the piece. And when people, not when people, when one starts reading books about artists and art and everything else, and Andy Warhol meant this by that, and this line means, I don't believe in that
Mm.
unless the artist actually left a note saying this red line means that I was angry at my wife. You know, then I could believe it.
It's a really interesting point. I hear what you're saying, but I know that in this group I'm always pushing people. I mean, doing a piece of art because it just came out of you and not knowing where it came from, I get it.
Hmm.
But at some point, you have to look at it and you have to know, what was I thinking when this happened? What does it mean to me? Why did I decide to go in this color and this color scheme or whatever? And it's not so much that you have to find the answer, but it's like I want people to start thinking about how they're looking at their work and what they're exploring,
Hmm.
maybe to get to that question,
Hmm.
of what question are you working through in your art?
Yeah, yeah, well, I think most artists question what they do.
Oh, totally.
You know, I don't think that people blindly make something and say, "Well, it's finished." You know,
Well, you know what? I think in the beginning levels, people do.
well, because they're afraid of going further.
Yeah.
They're afraid of exploring what the next color could be. That's what happens. People get scared, and I can't do it,
Yeah.
and or I don't want to do it. So
I think too, besides exploring the next color, that color could be the next emotion,
yeah,
the next,
yeah,
feeling, the next boundary they have to cross
hmm, yeah,
in all sorts of ways.
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to be said. I mean, I love German expressionist art. I love it, and I don't know why I'm getting to this tangent, but I love it because of its directness
I was gonna know.
and
Yeah.
its directness, its color, its angles. I mean, I'm looking at German expressionist prints in front of me. So you know that school of painting is phenomenal to me. And if you look at you guys can't see it, but if you look at the picture in the middle,
Yes.
that's a Chicano artist.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So and that comes from there's a print by I believe it's Eric Heckel back in the 20s, and we call it the Frankenstein, but it's like a portrait of a man who's green like that.
I
So
would, I would, I have to tell them,
yeah.
you guys have no idea what is in this room. I mean, you're just seeing this little snippet of us on
Mm,
this couch with some glass pieces behind us, but this room is filled with treasure and art and sculpture and, I mean, every expression of you.
Well, yeah, I like things, and I like things.
Of course.
I have, this might be vulgar, but I'm going to say it anyways. I decorate in what a woman friend of mine told me many years ago. She says she decorates in hysterectomy, no period. so 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 her style is hysterectomy. That's no period.
Hysterectomy, no period. Oh my gosh. All right, I'm going into my computer here because I can see there are a couple of things that came up, and I want to
Um,
just address them and look at them and see if I can. Come on, where are you? Why aren't you here? Oh, here we go. Okay, I just want to make sure I turn down the sound. Let's see if I can. Nope, nope. There you are. Okay. All right. So I see that there's some comments here. So I want to just, okay. Okay. So, hi, Anthony. Hello, Lynn. Hello, Lisa. Hello, Julia. Good design always speaks. Anthony's agreeing with you. Are you familiar with Anthony Villarreal and his work? He works in tape.
Anthony Villarreal, no.
I'll show you his work later. Show him his work a little
Mm.
later. All right. Anyway, Georgia says, oops, she's in late. Julia says, thrift stores are amazing places to find amazing things. Absolutely. Georgia says, I have an early Winslow Homer done in the Hudson River style.
Hmm.
Does that mean something to you?
Yes.
Okay, good. It doesn't mean anything to me, but okay.
Hudson River School was in New York. F. Hopkinson Smith was one of the um, founders.
Well, there you go, Georgia. And Lynn says, I've never read the blurb either. She's talking about on the paintings in the galleries
Mm.
or in the museums. What speaks to me in an artist piece is for me to understand from my experience. I feel what I feel.
Yeah, yeah. She brings a lexicon
Yeah,
to the work.
yeah,
Rather than reading something that somebody has concocted in their brain and thinks, this is what so and so meant. How do you know that?
right. Unless they wrote it themselves.
Unless they wrote it themselves. It's kind of like what Magritte did, kind of snubbing, ceci n'est pas un pipe.
Right.
It's, ceci n'est pas un pomme. It's this.
And he's talking about the painting. You've probably seen it. It's around. It's been even characterized in cartoons.
Yeah,
It's a picture. It's a painting of a pipe, and in French it says, "This is not a pipe."
this is not a pipe. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's people you bring to stuff, and the more you see, the more you bring. I mean, that's why I tend to look at everything, even things that I know I don't like. I even listen to things I don't like rap, I don't like hip hop, but I listen to it.
Yeah.
And so that when next something comes up that might have an element of that, I can sort of understand
What direction?
where it comes from. So, uh, and I think most artists do that. They pick up and listen, and then it comes out in the work.
Yeah. I want to just clarify to my people here and to you
Mm,
that when I ask artists to sort of know what they're painting about,
mm,
it doesn't mean that I want you to explain to everybody what it is in terms of like every time you show your work, you tell people what to see, but I want you to know inside why you did it. You don't have to explain to anybody anything, about your work because it's personal.
right.
And when I ask, it's not because I need to know. It's because I want you to know, and you probably haven't been thinking about it. So, but I mean, it's not to make other people think the same thing that you think when they look at your painting. It's just so you know what it is, and then you can let people interpret it however they want, whatever is meaningful for them.
Hmm. Yeah.
Oh, and George is saying it doesn't look like Homer's normal work.
Well, again, it doesn't look like Homer's normal work. You're looking at a piece that is not in a Homer book, but it could be a Homer. It could be something he was experimenting with. It could be something on his blue day or something or other.
Right.
Again, artists are people, and when you peg somebody for just doing one kind of thing, like a one trick pony, this is so and so style. I mean, that for me doesn't work because every artist has different phases, different styles, different whatever, as you go along. And so maybe one day Homer did something out of the ordinary canon that he followed. Who knows? Who knows? You need to take it to an expert on Homer, and they can tell by the paper, they can tell by the ink, they can tell by a myriad of things that really don't rely on the actual iconography.
True.
That's it's forensic.
Yeah.
It's all
That's true.
forensics. So
Yeah.
there you go.
There you go.
So
It definitely will have the provenance.
okay, well, fine. If you have the provenance that Whistler gave it to his mother, then not Whistler, Homer. Homer
I
gave
was
it.
like, where did Whistler come
Yeah,
from?
I'm thinking of no, that Homer gave it to one of his boyfriends. That's another thing. Anything written by the artist is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
It really, God, it sort of opens up the forgery world though, in a way,
mm,
because I mean, you could pick up anything and say Picasso did this in his glass period.
mm,
I'm not saying that you could do it with anything, but I
yeah.
mean, if you found the right object for the right period of time, it could be inserted into that time frame and innuendoed.
Well, not really if you're doing it on the up and up because
Well, of course, if you're doing
if
it on the up and up, no.
no, if you're going to see that works a lot with people who, for me, it's greed in the back of their heads
Yes.
that they're buying this, Dali that somebody found in the thrift store, whatever, for like $5 because they know it's worth $5,000, and then it turns out to be a pastiche. So um, it it's very difficult to sort of put something in somebody's uh, calendar or schedule or whatever if the materials don't jive. You look at illuminated manuscripts of famous. During the 20s, these wealthy people were buying illuminated manuscripts. And then it comes down that that color blue wasn't invented until,
Much
19,
later.
yeah. So the forensics on things like that basically tell you the story.
Yeah.
The materials speak for themselves. But if you're trying to make a quick buck, and Dali was infamous for it because he prostituted himself. He would sit at the St. Regis Hotel at the bar, and you would buy him a glass of cognac. He'd sign 5 sheets of paper for you, and you would walk away with 5 sheets of Dali signed Arches paper, and you can go and make anything and say, well, Salvador Dali signed it,
Oh, interesting.
and that happened because there were a number of dealers, one specifically on Long Island, who was caught for that. Yeah. So, uh, but I don't know if this is coming out of the fact that it doesn't look like a Homer, but it is and it has a provenance. Uh, yeah, if you have provenance that this might have been something that he did for a friend in a different style or gave it to someone, whatever, that's a whole different thing. But you
We're
can't.
just experimenting.
Yeah, yeah,
We're
just
just
experimenting. Yeah,
experimenting.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
How are we doing on time? Let's see. Oh, ooh, we're an hour in. Okay. Well, you know what? Okay. I'm going to just ask one more question that might
Yes.
take a minute. I need to ask you about all your fantastic jewelry that you're wearing today because I'm looking at your ring. Please show everybody your ring and your bracelet. I mean, it's hard to see, but I mean, these are
These this is
crystal,
this is rock crystal,
amethyst?
amethyst, rock amethyst, and the bracelet was given to me by one of Los Angeles' most famous witches, and this I bought many years ago. So
Wait a minute, you can't tell me that a witch gave this to you and not tell me more.
Yeah, I know the witch. I can't say her name.
Oh, okay.
I know the witch, and it's witch with a W. Um, uh, I was wearing the ring, and she said, "Oh, years ago I bought this bracelet that has a stone similar to that, but I can't wear it. It's too big." And I said, "So would you like it?" I said, "Yeah. Hello. Never say no to jewelry."
Right. Do you know
So,
me?
so, so she gave it to me, and it works perfectly with
It's
it.
fantastic.
Yeah. So it's three cabochon polished crystals,
It's just,
rock crystals.
yeah, they're just huge, huge and beautiful.
And this is small for me. I have larger jewelry than this.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know.
I'm like maybe I'm the reincarnation of Nancy Cunard.
I
You,
don't know who Nancy Cunard
I
is.
gewalten Himmel. These people don't know, they know nothing. Nancy Cunard was the socialite in the 1920s and 30s.
Well, it's not like she was in my time frame.
But
Sheesh.
it's history. She was very loose, a woman of loose morals and very wealthy. She was, cocktails and whatever, and it was always in the newspaper, always in
Oh,
the tabloids of then, because she was always doing something. And I'm going to say something that if anybody's offended, I'm sorry, but this is what was said, okay? So I'm not going to change Shakespeare. Um, uh, there was a gossip columnist named Dame Margot Asquith. And Nancy Cunard, okay, there's a famous photograph by Man Ray, I think it is, of this woman who's painted whatever, and she has all of these ivory bracelets, and she's like this. That's Nancy
that's
Cunard
her.
of the Cunard shipping line. That's the
Oh,
money. So, anyways, Dame Margot and what you call her? I was just saying her name, brain fog, were kind of enemies.
Nancy Cunard.
Nancy Cunard were enemies. So one day Nancy Cunard did one of her pranks, antics, whatever this and that, and De Margot had published in the newspaper, what is it this time? Drugs, booze, or niggers? So that was it. That was it. But it sort of encapsulated Nancy Cunard's life because that's what she was about: drugs, booze,
Don't
and
say it.
men.
And thank you. Okay. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Anyways, that was the Roaring Twenties and the Thirties. I mean, they were all having their little cocktails and Park Avenue terraces and whatever, whatever.
And so your jewelry, you're telling me that your stacked jewelry style is Nancy
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cunard-esque?
Nancy Cunard-esque, which goes. Oh, well, before we leave, I will name drop a little bit. When I did my internship for Hunter, I graduated from Hunter College in teaching. I did my internship at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Okay, this was in the 70s, and the woman, the professor I was working under, had an office at the Met, and it was right next door to the office of Diana Vreeland.
Ooh.
Now,
That's
Diana,
funny. Her name came across my head while you were talking
okay,
earlier.
yeah, the bracelets reminded me too. So Diana and Enid were very good friends, and they would both smoke like crazy. Now, think about this. This is a museum that is housing 5,000-year-old cloth mummies, and people
They're
are
smoking.
smoking in it. So I would see Diana, Miss Vreeland, as you call her, every day. Every day I was here every day because she and Enid would smoke together and stuff like that. So one that year uh, for Christmas break, Miss Freeland had gone away, and Enid was leaving like for the weekend, and I had to tidy up and get some papers together and stuff like that. So I look in Miss Freeland's office, and she has this big crystal ashtray that has a mountain of cigarette butts in it. Enid has the same on her desk. So I take both ashtrays, I empty them, I clean them, I put them back on the desks. Um, the break is over, whatever, and a few days later, I get a postcard from Enid saying, "Thank you for the clean ashtray Christmas gifts." And I always would tell my partner about this and everything. I think I was like, yeah, right, yeah, right, yeah, right. Uh, not long ago going through my stuff because I'm like an old Italian lady. I save everything. I save umbilicals and everything else. I find the card. I find the card from Enid thanking me for the gift of the clean ashtray from she and Diana. So, but Diana Vreeland was, I'm sorry,
Was she awful?
no.
Oh,
Well, I never had to deal with her. I would see her, and I would say hello to her if she was in proximity. She was the ugliest white woman on the planet.
she was?
She looked,
Maybe because she smoked so much.
if you ever see the movie The Mummy, with Boris Karloff,
It's kind of
okay, again, 1930s. She
fire.
knows, they don't know anything.
I'm not a movie girl either.
Okay, well, he plays Arthur Bay, and he has this shrunken, shriveled face. And she was tanned from the nicotine, both of them. I mean, it was just the thought of that, and I didn't think of that when I was there. And those were only two women. There were maybe 100 offices and people working in there, all smoking, with 5,000 a year old mummies in there. Oh, anyway, but
Ugh.
but that was a trip. That's a whole other adventure. My time at the Met was something else. Was something else. I had access to any and everything, and
I can see how your life, I mean, you've just been stacking information one on top of each other, and they're just feeding and feeding and feeding.
um,
And I mean, there's so much information. Georgia says, I love his knowledge
well, okay, well, uh,
because you're a listener.
yeah, you have to listen, just like what's his name told them when they were doing We Are the World, Quincy Jones. Quincy Jones told every star that he had recording at the studio,
Yeah.
he said, leave your ego at the door. That's it. Park it, and whatever. When you're leaving, you can give the girl the hat check and take it back home. But when you're involved with people, um, you have to know how to listen.
Yeah.
You have to know how to listen, and people appreciate that. I mean, again, I've been very for a little black Puerto Rican kid from a housing project in Brooklyn. I mean, I've met people you would not believe. I've been let into apartments on Park Avenue and whatever that you would not believe.
Oh, I believe.
I've seen collections. There was one collection, man, that was all of these Nabi paint. Oh, can I tell one more
Yeah,
story?
tell it.
Okay. Um, for the book dealer, I had to go to one of his clients because she had a stack. She had a stack of Marie Cassatt
Mhm.
etchings that she wanted him to look at because she wanted to sell them. So I go, and it's at a place in New York called it was either the Essex House or the Hampshire House, all the way up Central Park West. I get there and I say, well, I'm here to see Mrs. So and so, whatever. I have to see her personally. And so they take me up to her suite. I go up, it's one elevator, it opens up to an empty vestibule, no other doors, it's only her door. So we ring the bell, the maid opens the door, and I walk in, and again, it's a big empty room with like three doors. So I tell her who I am and that I'm here like for Mr. So and so and everything else. And that. So she leads me in there. I go, I see the woman. It's very pleasant and very nice. And she's showing me the things, saying, ask him about this, ask him about that. So, I'm looking at this stuff. And so her person puts them in a thing and so gives it to me to leave. So the maid opens the door to let me out. And as I'm coming out, I look up above the front door, and there's a Modigliani painting of a woman
Yeah, yeah.
hanging above the door, but it's crooked. The frame is crooked like this. And I was like looking at this and say, look, there's $1 million painting on the wall, and it's crooked.
But nobody even straightened it out.
Exactly. Exactly. That's one of my many stories of people that I have visited, and I learned that a lot of these very well, I don't know about the new gang, but the old gang of very wealthy people were really very nice and polished, and uh, never had any trouble because of my color or whatever. Never got any of that stuff from those rich people. The ones I did get shit from were the nouveau riche people.
Mm.
But some of these old people, one man who had this collection of Nabi paintings, which are not Van Gogh, Ripone and people like that. This fabulous collection. Every time I would go there, his wife would, and this was a woman, had multi-million dollars. She would drag me into the kitchen because she wanted to make me a sandwich.
She wanted to feed you.
She wanted to make me a
That's
sandwich.
actually very sweet.
And she was obviously a survivor, one of the survivors. She would not let me go until I had a sandwich.
See, that's always very sweet.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Oh, and now George is saying that you should write a book. You should
You
write a
know,
book.
I should write. A lot of people have said that to me that I should write a book, but for me, it's kind of like kiss and tell.
Well, yeah.
It's kind of like kiss and tell, and I don't, again, and I think it comes from working with and for very famous people
Right.
who don't want to be told on.
Yeah.
That I have an aversion to that.
Well, maybe there's a way to work around that.
I've met a lot of very famous, very wealthy people um, who would rather be looked at as a man or a woman coming in or asking to do something rather than being so and so.
Yeah.
Or so one person. There's only one person on this planet who wanted to be who he was. Can't stand him. But
Don't tell.
no, I'm not going to
Don't
say.
tell.
I don't want to get a libel suit. But just about everybody else that I met who was either very wealthy or very famous, they wanted to be the person going into Trader Joe's to buy a container of milk
Yeah.
and not be bothered.
Yeah. Just be regular.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. So,
All right. Well, you guys,
thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for asking questions and telling us your stuff. Thank you for sharing all
Okay.
of this. I mean, it's there's so much more to know, but there's so very little time right now. Anyway, have a beautiful weekend. Oh, hi Kathleen. I'm sorry we're closing up, but we'll see you later. You're welcome,
Okay.
Georgia. Bye, guys.
Bye.